Hello, my name is Nathan Rubing, and this is my risk assessment matrix. So this last summer, well, beginning of the summer, I worked at UPS unloading and loading packages, and due to all the different conveyors and machines and all the different weights and sizes of the packages, there are quite a few risks involved with that job. I singled out three of them that were talked about quite a bit while I was there, and I'm going to suggest some. I'm going to suggest a few solutions to mitigate the risks associated with the job. The first risk that was talked about and demonstrated probably the most was pulling a muscle. As you can imagine, we are lifting boxes with all different weights and shapes, and so pulling a muscle in your arms or your legs is not uncommon, and it's got a pretty high likelihood. So we see the likelihood over on this side going down with increasing probability, and we have up here we have the consequence um, of the action. So for pulling a muscle, we know that the likelihood is very probable due to the amount of boxes we're handling every day, and the severity is medium. It might, if it's really bad, take you out of the job for a day, but more likely than not, it's just going to cause some pain. It's not going to be a big deal at all. So we're going to have that as a medium medium severity up at the top. So we're going to plot that right here because we have the probable. It's very probable, likely, so we have it all the way down at the bottom, and it's a medium severity, so it's a tolerable severity. So that'll plot us into a high severity, high consequence risk. And the solution I would propose to that is I don't really have a good solution to that. You can't avoid lifting the boxes, you have to lift the boxes, but the solution is you just have to educate the people on what the the associated consequences are and what leads up to pulling a muscle, like dehydration and lifting a box improperly and some stuff like that. So you just have to educate the people on what happens with that. So after we educate them, we aren't going to take down the consequence because the consequence remains the same. But the probability of it will go down to more of a possible, it's more possible than it would normally be. It's less probable than it would normally be. So we're going to replot our point after taking into account the residual risk. We're going to put that right there because we didn't change the consequence, but we changed the likelihood. So that gives us a medium risk right there. All right, our next risk is being hit on the head with a box, especially when you're loading the trucks up to be sent out to delivery. They have a conveyor, and that conveyor doesn't have sides on it, and quite often there are some pretty heavy boxes in excess of 20 pounds that come in, and it spills off the conveyor onto the floor of the trailer. And when that happens, you have one guy who's scanning the packages and stacking them in the truck like they need to be, and one guy who's trying to keep a way clear so in case there's an emergency like a fire, they both can get out. And now that involves a lot of bending over, and you're not going to be able, when you're bending over, to look up and see boxes coming down the chute that might spill off. So there's a high likelihood of that, and there is a good chance if you get hit on the head with a heavy box, that you could end up with a concussion or some other serious injury. So that is going to be a high probability with a generally unacceptable consequence. So that's going to put us all the way up here, because the chutes don't have sides on them towards the bottom. And then, so my suggestion to improve it would be to add sides. And the consequence would still be high, but if you add sides, it's not going to spill over hardly at all. And yeah, nobody's really ever going to get hit with a box. So my suggestion would, after taking into account the residual risk, move it from probable, because there are no sides on the chute, to not likely, because it's kind of hard to have a box spill over when there's sides. So we're going to move our risk assessment down to here, which gives us a medium risk for that accident. The last one I'm going to do was one that was more talked about, but it's very rare. When you're unloading the trailers, the semi-drivers can occasionally pull out with a person still inside. That happens not often at all because of the way the semi-drivers are supposed to check and make sure that nobody's in there. But it has happened. It's not very common, but it has happened. So we have a low likelihood, and so for this one we're going to have a low likelihood because it doesn't happen very often, and it's not a very severe consequence. You get taken out of work for a few minutes because the trailer just moves over to the yard, which isn't very far away. So you get taken out of work for a few minutes. So that's going to be I'm going to say that's not likely and a tolerable consequence, because nobody's going to get hurt, and it won't happen very often. So that's going to put us right about here, with still a medium risk, but it's a medium-low risk. And really there's not much else you can do to prevent it. Like I said, we already have guidelines in place for the drivers to check and make sure, and the people who are unloading the trucks know that if the truck starts moving, just stay still, and they're educated. Both sides are educated, and they know that it can happen, and what to do if it does happen. So there's not a whole lot we could do to mitigate the risk of this. It's not a severe penalty consequence, and doesn't happen very often. So we're gonna leave that where it is, because I believe that UPS has done a very good job of making sure that that does not happen at all.